I'm assuming that's what you have to do as well. So how have you managed to like not only not have people die on your watch as a direct result of the whole system, but also still run a fitness business, keep in shape yourself? Are there any sort of tips that you would give to people that struggle with that?
Yeah, it's not something I'd recommend.
Right. So
Certainly.
firstly, yeah, no, it's a genuinely really important point. It's like, and people don't want to hear it, but it is like change, like find another job. Like
Yeah.
you can do that. Like that is possible. There are many other jobs in the world. You don't have to like people don't have to do shift work. Like if it's because it is that deleterious to everything.
Yeah, this is it. This is it. I think a lot of people will they feel like there's a sense of bravado or admitting defeat or just being like, no, no, like hustle and grind, like I can do this. And if I had the choice, I certainly wouldn't. It's just ended up that I've got a 2-year contract as a hospital doctor that I have to finish before,
Hmm.
well, and luckily I'm very fortunate to be working with a great team of people who are kind of picking up some of the slack with propane. But yeah, so I think number one is pick the life that you
Well, even
want
then,
to.
because you've got your light at the end of the tunnel, so you know.
Yeah, exactly. I think without that, something would have to give for sure.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the way to look at this is you might not be able to have the perfect day set up from the outset, but look at the trajectory of your career in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time, and rather than thinking, what position do I want to be in, or what status do I want, or what salary do I want to be on, think, what do I want my day to look like?
Hmm.
Because that's far more important and far more immediate than any of these kind of second order things. Because if your day looks great, it doesn't really matter what the number on your paycheck is or what the title on your email signature is, because these are all things which they're not going to help you sleep at night. So I think having a hard look at your life and saying, okay, is my current trajectory taking me to the ideal day setup for me? And if not, as you say, you've got a range of choices. You can change that trajectory.
That's like a lot more profound an answer than I was expecting, to be honest. Like, I was expecting, because what I've done with some of my shift workers is like, look at map out the next 2 weeks. Okay, wherever you can be consistent and most rested, bank some of that for sleep and some of that for recovery, but then also figure out when you are going to be stressed. Maybe that's when you get your training sessions in, and just be proactive about it. But you've
I
taken
think that's
the
very sensible.
a bigger step back and said, okay, let's be proactive about not just the next 2 weeks, but your whole fucking life, mate. Like,
But I
let's
don't
look
mean
at
to be
what do you. No, but
idealistic
it's right.
and
It's
say,
it's true. Like we have this choice, and it's sometimes scary that we have this choice, and that's sort of I guess you could even go back to the very start of this conversation where we said, you were stuck in finance. It's very scary to say, actually, fuck, this isn't making me happy. This isn't what I want to do. What does make me happy, or what would make me serve a life of purpose is being a doctor. Okay. And then let's go do that. And it's the
and that
same
was it.
thing with your life, right? Like if you're saying to us that you want to train and you're living a life where you do not have the time to train, like we could, the amount of personal trainers that say that's just an excuse. It's not. It's very real for some people that they just cannot find the time to train. Then you can
Yeah.
change it. But then again, like what else are you doing in your off time? Like what else can you do to find that time? And so it doesn't necessarily have to leave it or result in a change of career. It could just be a reprioritization of a few things. Like go look at we were speaking about this before we hit record. Like go look at your phone and your screen time on your phone. Like, is that what you want for your week? Like to spend that much time on your phone? Or is it like maybe
Oh, it's
going
the
into
most
the gym?
sobering thing, isn't it? To look at that screen time number and be like, oh, wow, okay, I've spent this many hours on these apps. Like,
Yeah.
this is a real wake up call that, as you say, the priorities are out of whack. And that was the same decision I had to make with finance, which was just looking at my boss and saying, okay, if I continue on this trajectory and I do well and I do my homework and I, turn up like a good boy and all that stuff, then I'm going to end up in that guy's position. Do I want to be in his position? Like, he doesn't seem that happy. In fact, he's pretty overworked and quite miserable, and he's out of shape because he's got more hours and all that stuff. So yeah, it's sometimes a bit of a painful one to do, but that time is going to pass anyway, so you may as well make sure you're traveling in the right direction.
And the other good thing is that like it rids you of that sort of weird envy that you would feel of people that are quote unquote having success, because you see their success for the work that they're doing as well, and for the sacrifices that they're making that you don't want to make, and that's okay that you don't want to make them. Like
Yeah, a lot of the kind of hustle porn characters online seem to, like, they've instilled a sense of guilt in everyone by the fact that if you don't want the same level of success that they do, that you're somehow an inferior person. And the kind of subtext, or that's never communicated, is that actually it comes at the cost of peace and happiness. And to be the kind of person who is massively successful requires that you are a highly strung, anxious person that's always on. And so that is the cost that we have to pay.
I think that sort of still boils down to, or not boils down to, but goes back to what we were talking about before as well, with the achieving like accomplishments in different realms by being like, this is what I want to achieve, and it's not as hard as you think. Like, you can still live an enjoyable life, live a happy, and if you, especially if it's something that you want to do, like, it's not, it doesn't have to be a grind. It can be an enjoyable process as well, right?
Derek Sivers talks about him doing he did a bike ride every day or whatever, and it took him 43 minutes, and that's when he was like absolutely blasting it, like he was really going for it. It was quite unpleasant, and he'd come back, and then one day he decided to like just be a bit leisurely with it, like rather than completely knacking himself on the bike ride, he would just go a bit slower, and he stopped for a minute or two just to look at the sun, and he came back and he said his time for that same distance was like 48 minutes. And so he was like, oh, so it's actually only like 4 minutes slower to just have a much nicer time, to be putting in 70 or 80% of the effort and not killing myself in this bike ride and still get most of the result. So yeah, you know, that if you really have to be the top 0.01% of performers, then yeah, you're going to have to grind, and it's the diminishing returns. It comes at a huge cost. But
yeah, but you're happier, and it's also like you've got that room, like, you know, you've got that room then to, and you know, your example uses more time, but most of the time it's like, it's actually, you get more fun results because you're not like going into the gym 10 times a week, or you're not putting 12 sessions in a week. You're actually just doing the bare minimum. But the people sort of get upset at the idea of only doing the minimum. But if you're still getting better, like, that is still, number one, it's getting better, but that's still better. And as we touched on earlier, that's still so much better than what most people are doing.